Good evening. I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, July 20th, 2020 to order. We are conducting our meeting remotely in compliance with the special Open Public Meetings Act rules issued by Governor Inslee's emergency order. City Clerk, can you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel present.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington present.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin our meeting, we have a few special rules I want to go over with everyone. First, participation in public comments and public testimony on the public hearing will be accepted by the following methods. One, written comments testimony will continue to be accepted by email. Comments received before 5:30 deadline will be electronically provided to City Council for their consideration. Two, subject to technology limitations, the Council will also accept telephonic comments or testimony by calling the number listed on our agenda, 1-509-342-7253, conference ID number 640-515-091#. For the members of the public who are calling in, please be advised that we will take your call in the order received. To ensure order, your microphone will be muted until you have received you are recognized to speak. You will be recognized by the last four digits of the telephone number you are calling from. At that time, you will be asked to unmute your microphone by pressing *6. Secondly, for City Council members, as with our previous remote meetings, we will continue to use the round robin method in the sequence showing with the speaking and voting chart our City Clerk has provided each of you to ensure order at our meetings and that everyone has a chance to speak. With that, I will ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I would like a motion to approve the agenda as provided.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the agenda as provided.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there any objections? Okay, hearing none, the approval of the agenda has passed unanimously. Thank you. At this time, we are having a public safety presentation by our chief, Chief Primo. So with that, I will hand over the stage to the chief. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Greg Primo, your Chief of Police. Tonight, I'm going to do just a brief presentation on a public safety update. And to start that presentation, we're going to go ahead and start with a kind of a recap of the 4th of July. So just the calls for service that we experienced over the 4th of July holiday. If we could put the first slide up, that way everyone can see the statistics. Oh no, okay, there we go. So I provided a graph here. You can see we have 20 years of calls for service there. And as you can see, we continue to trend slightly downward over the last couple of years. It's dropped down to 44 total complaints over the span of through the 28th through the 5th, with 20 of the complaints coming on July 4th. Question I often receive is, okay, of those complaints that came in on the 4th, how were they handled or what did they look like specifically? So I broke down the calls specifically. One of those calls, the officer arrived and there wasn't anybody still on the scene. 8 of those complaints were more generic fireworks in the area. So there was no specific information on the location of the fireworks or who was lighting them off. It was just a general complaint that there were fireworks in the general area. 11 of the complaints that came in were specific to a location, at least 100 block on a street, or maybe even a given address. And of those 11, officers then responded to that location. So of those 11, the officers reported that 4 times they found that people are actually using legal fireworks. 7 times when they responded, they encountered groups of people where there were fireworks, probably illegal fireworks within that group, but they couldn't identify necessarily who was the person responsible for the fireworks. Pretty common that because it's the 4th of July, there's a lot of kind of neighborhood parties, families, friends getting together. It's very rarely is there just one person standing out doing fireworks by themselves on the 4th of July. So they're faced with dealing with groups of people as a solo officer coming up and trying to determine how to handle that call. West Pierce Fire and Rescue, we contacted them for any fire-related calls. They reported 1 fire-related, an actual fire, a vegetation fire in the city of University Place, just a minor fire, and then no injuries reported related to fireworks activity. We had 1 fireworks stand that applied for a permit, but they ended up not actually operating, so we had no fireworks stands in University Place this year. I was going to go ahead and open it up to the council to see if they had any questions specifically about fireworks before moving on to just a general crime stats update.
Okay. With that, I would like to ask Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor Belisi. I do. So, Chief, thank you for the update. Glad to get the feeling for what we have going on, and it's interesting to see it's trending down, a little bit down, but certainly has flattened over the years. Now we're about 2 years into having severely or significantly limited the type of fireworks that are available, but we still allow novelty devices, sparklers, and ground fountains, if I remember right, I think is how that all gets defined.
Correct.
On several occasions in your information there, you said, I think the number was 4, I may have it wrong, 4 times the officers arrived on scene and saw that there were illegal fireworks present, but they couldn't identify who was responsible for the fireworks or who they belonged to. What happens to the fireworks then?
Yeah, it was 7 times that they responded on that one. 4 they found legal fireworks, but on those, so we did confiscate some fireworks. The officers will confiscate it. A lot of times, like I said, they come up to a group and the group tends to know that they have illegal fireworks. And so the officer will ask, well, whose are these? And a lot of people don't want to claim them. So that's at the time when the officer just go ahead and says, well, these are abandoned illegal fireworks. And we go ahead and confiscate those. And we have a fireworks dumpster that we then appropriately dispose of them at a later time.
Great, thank you. Glad to hear that.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Oh, still muted.
You're muted, Mr. Lee.
Try again. Thank
There you
you,
go.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I was kind of amazed that there weren't more complaints. In the 40 years that I've lived here in University Place, this 4th of July was the noisiest of the ones that I've experienced. On a bright side, though, it was the cleanest. In the morning when I got up and drove down our street, typically it's littered with debris from fireworks, and people pretty much cleaned up. So I'm not sure. I guess people just aren't complaining. But it just amazed me because my wife and I both said, boy, this is the noisiest one we've ever had, ever. And then come to find out, it's I guess people are just rolling with the punches. Anyway, thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember McCluskey. I had the same comment that Councilmember Pro Tem Lee did. Around my house, there was quite a number of fireworks. Of course, they were probably in state, or as the residents would say, international waters. They floated a raft out there,
Mhm.
and one of your officers did come. There was a complaint, but it was pretty much a lull in the fireworks. But one resident down the road did blow one up, and your officer seemed to be a little exasperated. So I don't know if that was because it was understaffed, or it was towards the end of the festivities, probably around 10 o'clock when he came, and he worked probably really hard. And it was a warm 4th of July as well. So we had 4 officers on duty, or did we have more than that?
So we had 2 officers per shift. So there's a time between the swing shift and the graveyard shifts where we would have 4 for a short period of time, but we were still operating with minimum staffing and no extra staffing for the 4th.
Okay, that was my next question. If we staffed up like we had done in the previous years.
We tried. We tried this year again, as we normally do every year, to get additional officers. So we're paying on overtime and doing special emphasis shifts. It's just a very difficult time of the year to get officers to want to put in an extra shift on a holiday that
overtime for police officers.
Yeah, so it's a difficult time this year. Unfortunately, we didn't get anybody to sign up for those extra shifts.
Mm-hmm. My last question is, of the 20 calls that we got in, did we service all of the calls?
Yes, we did respond in some fashion to all of them. Like I said, the ones that were fireworks in the area, the officers still kind of drove to the general area, but as Councilmember Pro Tem Lee kind of commented, it was a pretty active night. So even when you drive to the area, you're not identifying exactly who that person is calling about.
Right. Yeah. Pretty frustrating night, I'm sure, for the officers.
Yeah, and for many people that are calling too. I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank the ones who did show up on the 4th of July and stayed away from their families so that they could help our community, at least show some police presence there. And at least some people probably were addressed verbally. So yeah. Thank them for that.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Continue, Chief.
Okay. If you can just go ahead, we'll jump into a recap of the first half, and we can jump on the next slide for me. So I wanted to provide everybody with, an update on where we are in terms of our crime stats and calls for service. As you can see, I'll start with the violent crime. We did increase in comparison. So this is a comparison of the first half of 2019 to the first half of 2020. So January through June. In comparison between 19 and 20, we've gone up 17% overall on violent crime, with the majority of that being in the aggravated assault area. So aggravated assaults are assaults that involve either a weapon or a significant amount of injury caused to the victim, regardless if a weapon was used. So you can see a 17% increase from 46 to 54. What I would like to note too is I gave a first quarter update, and that first quarter we were at 31 in 2020. So we actually kind of are trending, if you want to, a little bit on a downward direction from the start of the year. We started out pretty strong and heavy in the violent crimes, and it's over the last few months, especially through COVID, our violent crimes have actually kind of dropped a little bit. But overall, for the first half of the year, we're seeing an increase in compared to last year. Property crimes is where we're struggling this year. As you can see, we have a 26% increase in comparison to last year. Vehicle prowls is our number one challenge that we have, again, with some of the attractions that we have here in the city, with Chambers Bay as being a target. We tend to, and the number of apartment complexes as well are a factor in terms of anytime you have a large number of vehicles in one location, it becomes an easy target for car prowlers. And one car prowler coming in into an area on one night could hit 10 or 12 cars. And so that could really impact your numbers. So as you can see, we went up 44% in car prowls compared to last year. And then this in compared to first, and so even for first quarter of this year, we were at 197. So we even trended upwards the last 3 months on property crimes. In comparison to violent crimes, the last 3 months, we kind of started to trend down. Our property crimes were actually kind of starting to trend upwards. Oh, thanks, that helps. Looking at our calls for service, I have those broke down into dispatched calls. So these are all calls when somebody calls into 911 and is requesting a police response. So you can see that we're trending up a little bit in comparison to 2019. We're right now about 5% increase in calls for service on dispatched calls. Our self-initiated calls, these are going to be traffic stops, maybe a suspicious person contact, anything that the officer is not dispatched to, but they put themselves out on their own. So you can see we remain fairly flat in comparison to last year. I think you're going to see a part of the reason that remains flat is again related to COVID. After three months of COVID being out there, officers had to be really mindful about making contacts with people, certainly into the height of the pandemic. So I think we kind of dropped in a few areas, or specifically around traffic stops, in terms of self-initiated calls. I put in online reports this year because with COVID, we opened up online reporting to include frauds and higher levels for thefts. And so you can see that we had quite a bit more online reports in 2020 so far this year compared to 2019. It's not necessarily impacting the officer's time, but just adding to the total activity that we have going on in the city. I just want to give you a perspective on that, because now you can see total activity, we're up about 9% related to self-initiated, dispatched, and then those online reports. So the areas of public service or public safety is continuing to rise for the first half of this year. One of the impacts I'll touch on too about property crimes, and I probably be a question because I noted it up in my document up higher, was related to booking. The booking restrictions because of COVID has impacted us, I think, around some of those property crimes. Officers have, done the follow-up, made some arrests, but because of booking restrictions, people are not sitting in jail, at least even until court, or they're getting released or not even booked at all. So we had a few individuals that ended up committing multiple offenses. And in those cases, we were able to make follow-up arrests and get the restrictions lifted to get those people into custody and put into jail to be seen by the courts. So that's my update there, and I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions on that.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Chief, thank you so much for that report. One thing that really jumps out on your report, but you never addressed, and that is the issue of vehicle thefts, which is up significantly in the city. Mm-hmm. Can you maybe take a moment and just address what your theories, ideas are, and then what is our recovery rate on those vehicles, and what can citizens do to perhaps curb that?
Yeah, it certainly has increased in comparison to last year. To answer, I think that's one of those cases where we went through a series where we got hit multiple times early in the year. What can citizens do? Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of securing their vehicles, utilizing alarms, a club device on their steering wheels and whatnot. I haven't dived into all of the vehicle thefts to see exactly what kind of specific trends we could pull from those, but I can certainly look at that. Might be something that we share in an upcoming Chief's Corner or something to cover that topic specifically. But majority of these are getting recovered. And I can tell you that a vast majority of them are getting recovered outside of the city. So this is another example of where we're seeing offenders that are coming into the city are able to commit these crimes, and then we're recovering the vehicles outside of the city. So we know that we can make an assumption, even when we're recovering them without a suspect, that's probably where they're coming from.
I think it would be a great interest, I think, to the citizens in general, just to have an understanding of if their vehicle's at risk, what can they do to mitigate that? And, like you said, maybe in a Chief's Corner or some other venue to share that information. I think that would be significant for the folks here.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. And Chief, again, thank you for the report. Quite interesting. So sometimes, and this may be the case with vehicle thefts, it might be the case with aggressive assaults, both of which are of concern, of course. There may be one or two individuals or a particular activity or something that drives those numbers up. Is it a trend overall, or is it more likely attributed to a certain limited number of bad actors?
There was a lot of conversation around this COVID time and how property crimes have really gone up. I think there was a lot of word on the street too about some of the booking restrictions, and it created an opportunity for those that, are just utilizing that, taking not necessarily a crime of opportunity, but they're going out and doing stuff that maybe they wouldn't normally do. I think it's a product of that more than anything. Like I was talking about before, where we had booked, we had an individual that we caught on a burglary of a commercial business here. When the officers stopped him and took him into custody, he questioned why we were even contacting him, because he knew about the booking restrictions. So I think the word is on the street from those that commit the crimes. And if you're a vehicle prowler or a car thief, they know it's a property crime. And even if they'll make that risk even more so, knowing that they're not going to go to jail right now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, even though they're not in jail right now for a variety of reasons and all around public health, they still have the strongly likelihood of being prosecuted and then being convicted and serving crime or serving time or some other rehabilitation approach. So isn't that the case?
Correct. Yeah, everything is still processed on our end for sure. It goes down to the prosecutor, and the prosecutors are still filing charges when the courts are more active. Right now, they're reserving everything for violent crimes and domestic violence related issues. But yeah, we're still processing everything. But the challenge that we have is criminals don't think down the road, right? They just right now it's I'm going to deal with it now and see if they catch me, and I don't care about what happens to me later. Sometimes they're like a teenager.
Often, I would say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions at this time from council? Well, I want to thank you, Chief, for your report, and I look forward to getting a follow-up in your Chief's Corner on vehicle prowls and property crime, what our citizens can do. As a reminder, I know we do this on a periodic basis, but hopefully, if we send the message to them enough, they will get it, not to leave things in their car and to make their car attractive to vehicle prowlers. And maybe post-COVID, we will actually get these criminals off the streets and prosecuted for their crimes, because I know it's annoying to those that have the crime committed against them, as well as citizens in general, that this is allowed to continue. So,
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for attending our meeting this evening. All right, at this time in our agenda is public comments, but as you all know, there were no public comments in our inbox at 5:30 this evening, and so we have none at this time. The next item on our agenda is our consent agenda, and before I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, I did want to note that item C ordinance, a resolution number 924 that deals with the COVID, with our COVID CARES, or not COVID, our CARES Act, has had a date change on it. Previously, the reallocation date that the city manager was given was August 17th. And it is being changed to July 27th to ensure that our businesses get the funding as soon as possible, to be able to make it more effective. So that's the only change on that provided resolution that is up for approval. So unless there are any questions regarding that change in date, I would ask for a motion to approve or amend the agenda, or the consent agenda as provided.
Mayor Belisi, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the agenda. I do have a point of order question.
Sure.
Earlier tonight, I had received some information that suggested we may be pulling this item, but what you just told me is that we can proceed with this item.
That is correct. Yes.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, then I'm all
Yes,
set
so
to
it
move
it is just a change in dates and not a change in context. I mean, yeah. So I have a first, do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second the modified agenda.
Okay. I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to the consent agenda as modified? Okay, not seeing any, consent agenda is approved as modified. With that, our next item on the agenda is council consideration. This is an item of construction zone speed limit. I know that it is our standard policy to conduct a study session first before having items on our for council consideration. However, this is an item that was requested by the contractor that is working on our CERC project to have a special construction speed zone through there to help for safety and traffic control issues. And when investigated, the staff found that these items were not, or this ability was not in our current code. So tonight we are just going to go straight to council consideration, hopefully after we have our staff report. So I just wanted to give you context as to why this is on our agenda and we haven't studied it in the past. With that, I will turn over our meeting to our Chief Engineer, Jack Eklund, for his staff report. Mr. Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I'm Jack Eklund, Director of Engineering, and tonight I am bringing to you for your consideration a proposed amendment to Section 10.10.010 of the University Place Municipal Code. This amendment would allow for an administrative temporary reduction in speed limits on roadways undergoing construction or repairs. Now, high vehicle speeds through construction zones pose a hazard to both construction workers as well as the traveling public. Most jurisdictions have administrative provisions that would allow for temporary speed limit reductions in these cases. However, as the mayor mentioned, the University Place does not. The attached code amendment would allow for this temporary speed limit reductions when conditions merit. It would need to be based on an engineering study, and the results of the recommendation of that study would be then documented in the files. The speed limit, this is a consistent language with what other jurisdictions do, and then we would set it up that the speed limit would not be able to be reduced below 25 miles an hour on arterial streets and nor below 20 miles an hour on local streets. And then under this provision, the adopted speed would be restored back to its original limit once the construction is completed to a point in which conditions would merit safe passage of traffic. So other thing is, as the mayor mentioned, this was specifically requested from our current contractor out there on CERC. They have some concerns with quite quite speedy folks going up and down at times. And so both a concern for their workers as well as particularly pedestrians that still are walking through the areas. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any question, and would be also recommend I do want to draw your attention as well to the resolution in the package, and I would recommend the passage of that. So anyway, any questions you may have?
Okay, at this time, because we are doing questions questions on the staff report, I will use our seating chart for the first go around of questions. So Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any questions regarding this report? You're muted, sir.
Okay, council member does not have any comments.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor. First, I want to say that I'm very familiar with this stretch of roadway, and I will tell you that over the 33 years that I've been familiar with that stretch of roadway, there has been speeding. I mean, excessive speeding, you know, and so yeah, to the point that we've had some fatalities in that area too. So I'm all for reducing during this construction. My question, Jack, though, is in your thought, is there a time that we're actually is staff considering, you know, lowering it permanently at some point in time in there?
Yeah, so back a few years ago, we had a request from several residents actually to reduce the speed limit through that area. At the time, when we did our engineering study, we recommended lowering the speed in the upper part where all the improvements are built and kind of the nature of the street kind of feels like that lower street, and then recommended revisiting the potential for the rest of this roadway when we complete the project itself. So I would envision that we would come back, kind of reevaluate with the updated speed study and accident analysis, and see if our previous recommendations are, I think the indications from the past study was once we have the improvements built, it would make sense to match it down to 30 like the rest of the street. But we would want to update the study and present the findings back to council before we do that.
Great, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember McCluskey. I'm assuming that this will have also an authority to set up more safer speed zones, maybe flaggers and things of that nature that typically we do have in our construction zones. But if we gives you the leverage to probably ante that up a little bit, because the speeding down Cirque is an issue, especially when you're transcending down the hill. And the other point that you made with the walkers, that's going to be a tougher nut to crack, isn't it? How are you perceiving to handle that? Because, you know, they're walking along the sidewalk and they see just a dirt patch and they think that they can go around it by walking along the dirt, because they don't really see barriers, but the other side is closer than walking across the street and walking.
Yeah, it's tricky. And we've, at least while they're on site, we have talked to the flaggers, and the flaggers have on this current project, they have a radio system where if they see a pedestrian coming down, they notify the rest of the flaggers, and then often they will, they may even escort someone through a zone, or at least make sure they're communicating with the other flaggers to make sure it's safe. That being said, it's still difficult. You can't always control what folks want to do. And then when they're not there, there still is spots, like you mentioned, where it's under construction, they're going through the dirt, or maybe they'll go into the street. And that's where the temporary speed limit reduction helps, even when, like when they're not actively building, like overnight, then at least, or in the evenings, you know, you would still have some extra layer of safety for that.
Right. Okay. And then the local control will be you as a city engineer, your position to implement it and to look at the recommendations, see if they're reasonable.
For the speed limit reduction, yeah.
Oh, just for that? Okay.
And then for the traffic control, that's already built into our contracts. And so the contractor will, they need to meet with the MUTCD, you know, meet the requirements for flagging. They do propose those measures to us, and we approve them, but we do not develop them ourselves. That's ultimately the contractor's responsibility, but we do approve them. And if we are concerned with seeing, we will bring that to their attention to say they may need to take some more measures as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Fleming. You know, Jack, I just want to stay focused to the ordinance itself and what you're requesting. And, you know, as I read through that, I have to tell you how surprised I was that as a city, we already don't have that in place. I mean, this is a very common sense ordinance, which I would suspect, and I'm pretty certain that majority of other jurisdictions already have. So I just want to say thanks for identifying it and bringing it to the attention of council and getting this one on the books, because I don't know how this one slipped through the cracks, to be honest with you. So thanks.
Yep.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. Jack, thank you. And yes, I think Councilmember Fleming has an excellent point that often you would find this in place. I'm glad we're getting it in place. Sometimes you might also find that in construction zone, traffic fines for speeding are different. But as I understand this, there will not be a difference in the fine. It remains to be whatever would usually be assessed for speeding. Is that correct?
That at least wouldn't be addressed in this ordinance itself. I don't know. That's something I could check with the chief, but that's more of traffic enforcement. I don't know. It's not specifically addressed anywhere in our code, but it may be allowed. They may have the latitude to do that if they, you know, if a offense is particularly egregious, I think, but that's not addressed at least under this portion.
I think we see that sometimes in state highway projects where they put up and fines are doubled, by the way. Just make sure that we've got your attention. So, but all right, then maybe something to look at in the future. But thank you, Jack.
Yeah, it's amazing what year 25 will do if we find out all sorts of things that are in our ordinances that we didn't realize were in there. So it's nice that it was brought to our attention before we had a serious project that needs something like that, and we've got it in place at least. We don't have any public that's currently listening in, nor did we receive any emails regarding this issue. So with that, I will move to request a motion to approve the ordinance that is in our packet. So may I have a motion and a second? So we can discuss it for passage.
Mayor Bellisi? Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move the approval of the ordinance as presented in our packet.
Yeah. Councilmember Keel, and I second.
Okay, so I have a first and a second. Are there any comments or additional bits of information you need on this particular issue? Okay, not seeing any, I will ask our city clerk to conduct a roll call vote on this issue.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa, yay.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Trying to,
You're muted.
oh, there we go. Finally. Guess they didn't like where I put my cursor over the microphone. Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion passes, Mayor.
Mayor, you're muted.
Our next item on the agenda is our council comments and city manager reports. I will ask our city manager, Steve Sugg, for his report. Mr.
Thank you,
Sugg.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Steve Sugg. At the July 6th meeting, City Council officially accepted the $992,700 money from the state of Washington as part of the Federal CARES Act. Those funds will be redistributed into the community to assist with COVID-19 recovery efforts. Out of the $992,000 that you officially accepted back on July 6th, $500,000 will be used to support University Place businesses that have suffered significant economic losses as a result of the state mandated shutdown that began in mid-March. Now the application period began 2 days after you approved that money. So it began on July 8th and it ends this Wednesday, July 22nd. So the application period closes this Wednesday, July 22nd. As of today, at the end of today, before this meeting, I got word from Glenn Valentine, who's been monitoring that and developed this wonderful online application form. Thank you, Glenn. We have the completed applications that have been received as of today of this hour is 62. So it's a pretty healthy number. We'll be giving you a full report on the CARES applications and any fund distribution at your second meeting in August, which is the August 17th meeting. So that's my report, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. At this time, it's time for council comments. I will again use the red robin method for council comments. Council Member Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments.
Okay. Council Member Keel.
Councilmember Keel, no comments.
Okay. Council Member Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comment.
You can tell we're under COVID housebound. Nobody's out doing anything. Council Member McCluskey.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey has no comment. Thank you.
Council Member Fleming.
You know, Madam Mayor, thank you. Councilmember Fleming. I'm feeling guilty because I should say I have no comment, but the other part of me is saying, well, as a physician on the council, I'm obligated to just remind folks that, yes, we are in COVID season still. And if you hadn't read or noticed or heard, COVID is definitely on the rise here in Pierce County. And that's part of our community. So, you know, the impact is no longer just among the senior population. It's now hitting the 20 and 30-year-old population. The morbidity and the mortality rate is likewise on the rise. So the plea and the pleas is really to please practice that social distancing, wear your mask, avoid public spaces if you really don't have to be out there or gathering in groups. And, you know, just the request of our citizens is really together we can beat it, and together, you know, we can protect our community. So that's my sales pitch tonight. So thank you.
Well said, Council Member Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Belisi. A couple of quick things. One is the Rainier Communications meeting our Communications Commission had a meeting last week. And in the course of that meeting, they reviewed some potential changes and objectives for a future franchise agreement with Comcast. Some of that will potentially affect us, and we're getting the ground plowed, if you will. City staff, in terms of our city attorney, along with Linda, have been engaged in that, and they're following this action, and will be able to advise council with what's going on and what the options are in some future time here as we move forward with that. But I just wanted to let you know some of the groundwork is underway with it, with the RCC and Rainier Communications Commission. Also, with tonight's fireworks report, it's a chance for me to think a little bit more about fireworks. And I was, of course, glad to see that our reporting is down, but it doesn't seem exactly like the incidents are down from the more anecdotal information that many of us were responding to. We're sort of straddling the line between having fireworks in our community and not having fireworks in our community. And it makes it, I think, challenging to really know which side of that line we're on. And we have an initiative, a referendum rather, 3 years ago, I think it was here, that had about in excess of 60% of the community who voted, and it was a large turnout, by the way, saying that they wanted fireworks out of the community. I still hear that, and I still, in fact, believe that. I find myself thinking, well, maybe we need to take the next step and bring an end to some of these other types of fireworks that have us neither in nor out of the fireworks process. One of the reasons I bring that up is the News Tribune this past year was listing cities that allowed fireworks and didn't allow fireworks, and we were on the side that said we allowed fireworks. At least that's how they interpreted our rules. Mm-hmm. I think it's challenging for everybody to figure that out. I think also, while we have allowed fireworks and that sale, no one has really taken advantage of that because the limitations are such that they probably can't make money at doing it. So anyhow, I bring it up now just because it's that season. In the event we were to make a change this year, as we all know, it'll take another year before it takes effect. And so it would be, in fact, 2022 before any change further limiting fireworks take place. So something to think about, colleagues, and maybe we'll have a chance to chat about it at some point. I just wanted to share those thoughts now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I, like the rest of my council members, have not been as busy as I have been in the past due to the fact that a lot of the organizations that I attend meetings on have been either finding reasons to cancel their meetings or holding them online, and there have been no meetings over the last couple of months that I have had to attend online. So I have nothing to report to council members at this time. One thing in regards to the fireworks that I will say is that since we had no stands in our community that were selling the legal fireworks, technically I think the majority of the people that were firing off fireworks were firing off, while they may have purchased it at legal stands, were not abiding by our regulations and firing off illegal fireworks. So just a word of caution, even though we don't sell fireworks or did not have stands in this city, our citizens still found ways to bring fireworks into our community, and that's always been a challenge with this. I do want to say, however, that from my vantage point on the 5th floor in downtown UP, while some neighborhoods may have experienced the worst noise that they can remember in their time here in UP, I did not have to turn up the volume on our TV. I felt that it was quieter this year than it has been in the past. And those that were firing off fireworks were, for the most part, very considerate of the time limitations, the majority of the noise being from 9:30 to 12:30. So for that, I do want to thank the citizens for at least trying to be cognizant of their neighbors and limiting their distribution of fireworks. I still would like to know, however, those individuals that feel the need to shoot off fireworks the week before at late hours and 2 or 3 days and even 2 weeks after the 4th of July in the early morning hours. I would appreciate if their neighbors would rat them out so we can at least send a strong message to them that will not be tolerated. I think that's just awful. And I can see where people get even more frustrated, and without any distinct address and location information, it makes it extremely difficult for our police officers to even do anything about that. But I do want to thank the citizens for at least observing reasonable hours and setting them off, and for reducing the number of M80s that were out there during the fireworks season. I think that was noteworthy, at least from my vantage point in what I heard that evening. So with that, we will proceed on with our study session. We're going to ask our budget lady, Leslie Blaisdell, to come forward and give us a study session on the fund ordinance. So Ms. Blaisdell.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director, and in your packet tonight is an ordinance containing housekeeping adjustments to University Place Municipal Code 4.40 related to city fund types. The changes include some additions and changes to RCW references, the elimination of references to the recreation program, the addition of some new funds created in recent years, and elimination of fund types no longer in use. The new funds to be added include the Transportation Benefit District Fund, the Traffic Impact Fee Fund, Police and Public Safety Fund, and the LRF Fund, the Local Revitalization Financing Fund. The funds that will be eliminated are the Arterial Street Fund and the Paths and Trails Fund. Those were initially set up and used for a portion of the fuel tax, which the state required us to separate those funds. That is now no longer required by the state. So we're eliminating those funds, and all fuel taxes will be going to the street fund. And additionally, there were 3 funds that, as the city attorney and I went through this ordinance, that we discovered were set up at the inception of the city, which have never been used. So my only guess is that it was something they thought might be needed along the way, but they were never used. And it's a University Place Retirement Systems Fund, a Deferred Compensation Fund, and an Investment Control Fund. So that concludes my report, and I open it up to any questions.
Okay, again, at this time, given that we have Q&A, we will use the seating chart. So Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any questions or comments?
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any questions or comments.
We need to meet more often online. I've never heard you be this quiet before. Councilmember Keel.
The only comment, Councilmember Keel, the only comment is Leslie and Matt, thanks for doing this. It's another no-brainer and something that was long overdue. So that's it, thanks.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I want to thank Leslie for your fine work on this. I have no other comments. Thank you.
Councilmember McCluskey. You're muted, ma'am.
There we go. I guess I'm impatient. Have to wait until it's ready to open up.
Yep.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too do not have any questions at this time.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, no questions at this time either. Thank you.
Well, it's got, the next 25 years, we're getting into the swing of starting our next half century with cleaner books and updating things. So I really appreciate your tenacity on getting this done. And with that, I guess we have no questions for you, Ms. Blaisdell.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for being here this evening. So with that, this will move forward for consideration. And we will discuss it at our next agenda meeting as to when we post that for council consideration. So our next item on the agenda is a proclamation against racial injustice that was emailed to you. I know at our last two meetings, council had indicated a desire to have a proclamation, and seeing as how it should be a proclamation representing all 7 of us, or at least the majority consensus viewpoint. I know Councilmember McCluskey, Councilmember Lee, and myself did work on a draft proclamation, and so we are here to discuss that to see if it is reflects the majority viewpoint to move forward. So with that, I am open for discussion and any ideas or amendments or changes that one might want to make to the proclamation. The idea is that hopefully we can reach a consensus on this evening, and based on the input that's received, I would move it forward and present it at our next council meeting as a council-driven proclamation. So I don't think doing a round robin on this would make sense at this point. So to have discussion, I will ask you to raise your hand and we can have a flowing discussion on that. So Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, you raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bellisi. So from my perspective, I had a chance to read the draft proclamation. I want to thank Councilmember McCluskey and you, Mayor, as well, along with Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, and all of you for your time and effort in putting this together. I value that effort, and I'm prepared to proceed.
Okay. Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. This is Councilmember Figueroa. And I did also get a chance to read it and review it. And I think that it covers the base for from the 13,000-foot level of recognizing and understanding of the times that we need to, as leaders, have a message about racism or injustice. However, I do want to be very clear, at least from my perspective, that this is no indication, and I want to be put on the record, that is no indication that I have observed any racism or injustices within my peers on this council. Since I've been on this council in 2010, I have not observed any racism, injustice within the administration to us or to our general public or constituents, nor have I seen that within our law enforcement as they provided public safety. I wanted to make sure that that I publicly say that because that is the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember McCluskey.
All right, second time instead of 5 times. I did it. Well, I would like to thank our fellow council members for considering a proclamation in regards to racial inequities and social justice. What I would like to have this proclamation become is a living document that we continue to add on to, because as we know, we're not going to resolve it in the immediate future. So I would hope that this goes on from generation to generation as a living proclamation that we continue to improve upon, and with some strong and strategic feedback tools to honor not only Black Lives Matter, but anyone else who is compromised in the protected classes within our city. Because as we know, there are laws that are already in place, and the laws can always be overturned. We've seen that happen. They can be ignored, they can be misimplemented, thus negating or devaluing their goodwill and intentions. So I am hoping that this proclamation will be a strong and strategic foundation that will strengthen these laws toward actual behavioral change, because I believe that the Black Lives Matter movement, that's their intention, to actually see constructive changes moving forward in all aspects of American society. So I'm hoping that this tool that in a sense of a proclamation is only like the preface of the whole book that we will hopefully write for our citizens with citizen engagement, our police and their agencies, our fire department with their coordinated care, our students, our school district. There's students in our student body that are extremely interested in being part of this discussion as well. And also, of course, our commissions, and not to have the council lead per se, but to have the community give us direction as city leaders to type of city that we are to become, and maybe incorporate a little bit of that into our vision as well. So thank you for your attention to this matter and your consideration.
Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank 3 council members for pulling this proclamation together, drafting it. I want to commend your efforts and what I believe to be your genuine intent and the things that are on your heart to address systemic racism. I mean, it's there. I mean, we all know it. I mean, it's not something that is hidden. And I agree. We're not going to solve it in a short period of time. We've been trying to do this for hundreds of years, and to no success, in my opinion. Very limited success, I should say. With all that being out there, I mean, I don't have a strong interest in a proclamation. My interest centers around doing something about what we know. And I can think of, many years in just my short lifespan where things will happen and everybody will make a proclamation, and we're going to proclaim, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to go do this, and this is what's going to happen. And and everyone feels good about the proclamation, and then 6 months, a year later, when that whatever incident that fired off the all ruckus dies down, then everything goes back to normal. So my interest is to actually change things, the law, the minds, mainly the law, to what and have it have some teeth, unlike I-940, which everyone talked about. Oh yeah, it's a great law, but it has no teeth, So, I mean, I love the idea and the notion, and again, I thank you all for doing that. But for me, the proclamation falls way short of what I'd like to see happen.
Are there any other council members that want to speak that haven't raised their hands yet? Okay. Well, I do want to say that I know discussion that Councilmember McCluskey and I had in regards to this proclamation is that this is the first step in moving forward, and hopefully during our discussions as we maybe eventually might be able to meet to have a discussion on council goals and objectives, that we use this proclamation as the living document, as Councilmember McCluskey said, and use that to set our priorities and council objectives to look at things. I think we have fallen short in doing systemic reviews of our policies and procedures, and to make sure that we are being open and equitable to all our citizens. So with this proclamation, it becomes our purview and our responsibility as council members to make it a goal and objective that we list out, so that we can hold ourselves accountable. Just like when we say we would like to increase policing, or we want to make priority to have landscaping and be economically, make economic development a goal and objective of council. I think this becomes a goal through this proclamation process. But I do believe we do need to bring our community in with this proclamation too, to gain an understanding of what they feel are issues that they perceive in our community, and how we can help to make lives better, or what regulations that we can support on a community level that will enhance and make small step changes towards reducing racism and the perception of racism in our community, not only University Place, but state of Washington and our federal government. So I'm hoping that we're not under this lockdown forever, and that we can eventually get face to face and really delve into this topic and address it in an open and honest manner as council members and citizens of this community. So I will commit to making it a priority, and I would like to hopefully see, when we do have our goal setting objective, that we as a council make this a priority to add to our goals. So any other comments or questions at this time? Okay, well, I gained an understanding or a consensus that we do have some consensus here from our council members to move this forward. Mr. Keel, did you raise your hand again for additional comments?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think the short answer for me is that there are things in a lot of different segments that we already know are racist. They have some effect on minority populations. I mean, we've studied them for many years, and we've got data already that shows that they are bad to certain groups. What I'm not interested in doing is getting another committee together and bringing citizens together again to talk about the same topic again. Well, what do you guys think? Well, what should we do? Well, what about this? Well, we've already done that. There are things that we know. And so if this council is serious, and this one council member, this council is serious about doing something about it, then what we do, I think, is we take the data that we already know, and we just all 7 of us debate that, talk about it, and we make some legislation that this is what we're going to do. We don't have to study that, because now, if there's some other things that we want to study, but I think there's some low-hanging fruit that we already know will make a change. Those are things that we should do. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. This can be tackled from multiple angles, and that's my hope, is that we do that. So, okay, with that, I will have this as a proclamation then at our next council meeting. We will open with that proclamation, and then I look forward to hearing your input specifically on what issues you would like to tackle first, and how we can approach this subject with our community. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation. It doesn't end with the proclamation, and it won't be resolved in a near future. It is an ongoing conversation. So let's be clear on that. Well, this took a lot less time than I was anticipating it would take. So if there are no additional comments or questions, we can go out and enjoy the heat. So with that, I will adjourn our meeting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.